Welcome back, everyone, to episode 14 of Finding Rachel. This is a podcast about a film, about a YouTube channel. You got it? Okay, welcome back to the podcast, everyone. This week I'm solo. I got no guests, just me. And I'll be talking about initial reactions and I guess reviews of my new documentary film, The TV Show, which is what this podcast has been all about over the last, year or so. So I'll be taking you through the reviews, both good and bad, although I think I just listed all the bad reviews. Anyway, let's see if we can fix that. And yeah, talk a little bit about what surprised me and what didn't surprise me. But before we kind of get into the nitty gritty of it all, I just wanted to give some context again about the film. I did need a little bit of money to help pay for distribution, right? Because it costs, I don't know, anywhere from about $25 to $100 to submit the film to documentary film festivals. Well, not just documentary film festivals, but all film festivals. So it's surprising. The first time I went through the process, I spent hundreds and hundreds of dollars. Didn't really know what I was doing. Wasn't very choosy. Ended up spending a lot of money, or I should say, ended up wasting a lot of money on festival fees. This time around, I was much more judicious, if that's the right word. But I still needed to fundraise a little bit. So I turned to the online community that is largely the focus of the film, sometimes referred to as the so-called vinyl community or VC. So there was a little bit of a built-in bias to, I suppose, the kind of reactions that I get to the film. It was a bit to be expected. And I'm certainly looking forward to having a broader set of opinions about the film. But in any way, I think it's helpful to go through some of the initial reactions and reviews of the film within the online YouTube community. Again, the subject of the film, the TV show, because in many ways it almost kind of reflects or amplifies some of the things that I I set out to do with the film itself. So anyway, without I don't want to provide too much wallpaper to this. I want to keep it to my usual 20-25 minutes or so. So let's jump right into it. Okay, so I would say that there were surprisingly maybe three main critiques of the film. And I'm using a broad brush here, but they were ones that I was like quite surprised they were kind of repeated over and over, or they kind of stuck to these three kind of critiques, if we can call it that. And the first one was, I guess it wasn't necessarily, these aren't necessarily negative ones, and anyway, I'll get into whether or not I thought they were helpful or fair or whatever. But the first one was that a number of people wanted more. Um, they wanted, well, in the first instance, they wanted a longer film, I suppose. But I think if you scratch down through that a little bit more, there were some interesting points about people wanting to have a more fulsome story of Rachel and her show, the Rachel's Ghost Show, YouTube show. I understand that. I would have loved to make a longer film. I would have liked to make a feature film. The feature films are much more easily sold and packaged and pitched to film festivals and distributors. The 33-minute film, as I'm finding out, is a much more difficult pitch proposition. It just doesn't quite fit into programming as easily as a feature, as easily as a 70, 80, even 90-minute film. But I think also there was what I saw as what some were they odd reactions? Anyway, no, I think people wanted to see their own experiences or their own interpretations, their own history with this YouTube channel reflected in the film. So when I say that people wanted the full story, I think it was a very subjective, of course, response to the film. It's like, oh, the director didn't really capture, the full story. The director didn't, and that could come from a number of directions, right? Um, the director didn't talk about what happened 2 years ago. The director in the film didn't really talk about, or fast forward, what happened back in January, or why didn't the film talk about when Rachel ended her show? So I get that. That's important, but you have to start stuff somewhere. But but I thought that was an interesting response, and that was one that I think was shared by quite a number of people. We want more. We want more of the story. We want more backstory of who this person is, the different dynamics that have been going on the show, and so on and so forth. So that's the first one. The second reaction that I received to the film was that um, I guess it was just kind of a play off the first one, is that individuals, including some people in the film actually, and including, I believe, Rachel herself, kind of wanted more of certain characters, right? That includes people who weren't even involved in the film, or people were saying, "Oh, I would have preferred less of this character or less of this moment in the film." So it was kind of I would call this second kind of critique is more of like a producer critique. It's like, okay, why didn't Greg do this, or why didn't Greg do that? I just said an adjunct to that too was, kind of another reaction, a little bit harsher reaction is kind of, well, why didn't this film tell this story, this other story? Sometimes that other story uh why didn't the film tell the story that I wanted to tell, or I would have told, right? Which I always find to be and I've said this online on a few shows, a few channels and streams. I always find it to be a very kind of an odd, and I'll be honest, a kind of a frustrating comment to receive when you're a filmmaker. It's because you spent all this time, right, making this film, all this money and this time, this emotional investment, this labor, the frustration of all the things that happened during the making of the film, and then you get this reaction is, well, you should have made the film that I wanted to make. It's kind of no, can we talk about the film that I made and rightly, justifiably critique the film, right? But can we at least at the beginning, talk about what's in front of us, right? And then maybe we can, expand to talk about other possibilities. But anyway, that's just a initial, kind of knee-jerk reaction. It's like, whatever, I don't want to talk about your film. I want to talk about my film. God damn it. Anyway, so that's the second one. Bit of a boring critique. Why didn't you make the film I would have made? Okay, the third one. This was a curious one. I think there were quite a few people who engaged in this kind of discussion, and it produced a little bit of a debate on a number of streams about whether or not the film is even a documentary, which again I didn't find particularly interesting as a conversation. Um, I don't know what really came out of that. I'm not really sure what animated that, except for perhaps a concern that the director, that is myself, over edited or took liberties, or had people act during the film, or somehow the truth of the story, the show, Rachel and others depicted on the show wasn't accurate. So, but no one actually pushed it to, or very few people, I would say, pushed those questions about, is this really a documentary, to that realm, right? To the realm of, is this real? To what degree is this manipulated? So again, I didn't find that to be terribly interesting discussion, but it is a noteworthy one because it was one that was repeated over and over. So I'd say that in general, those would be the three the three main kind of lenses, or the three main critiques that I heard kind of over and over the film. So what's I want to talk a little bit about kind of what surprised me and then what didn't surprise me after the film was released, and also maybe just to back up again, this it was a very limited release. People had to pay a little bit of money to rent it, and I think I'm going to say how many people viewed it. I should have prepared this before. I'm going to estimate. I'm going to guess that it was probably, oh, my brain. You know what? Somewhere around 75 people, I think, viewed the film. Some of those were free. Some of those were cast members. Some of those are members of a couple members of the crew and family friends. So they weren't all. So I didn't, collect revenue from all those people. But just to give you a sense as to the kind of numbers that we're talking about that provided feedback to me. Um, and then, of course, there were those online who provided very intense feedback, but obviously didn't see the film, or clearly said they didn't see the film, or didn't say that they didn't see the film. But anyway, let's put that to aside for now. So, what surprised me about the reaction, the reactions and the critiques, um, the first thing is that for a community that's focused on music, I thought it was really interesting that very, very few people, except maybe Rachel, a couple of people in the film, including the main subject, Rachel, very few people said anything about the music, about the soundtrack to the to the film. So I thought I thought that was really interesting that no one was was interested or made note of or wanted to talk about the music of the contribution, the original music of the film. So anyway, I think that's a bit of a lost opportunity, maybe, but maybe that's something that we can revisit down the road. And for those of you who haven't listened to the last podcast, Doug Tewksbury came on and we talked about his role in producing and mixing the music and the sound for the film. So do a little rewind and check that one out if you're interested. Okay, the other thing that surprised me um, was, I think, most importantly for me, is that out of all the people from the vinyl community, the online vinyl community who viewed the film or commented, discussed the film on different streams on YouTube, I would say honestly, maybe two people, one or two people. I'm going to say one and a half people actually engaged with the themes of the film. Like, right, these are like the ideas that I had in my film. The When I wrote out the script, when I talked to my editor, um, when I organized the film, when I composed questions for interviewees, all those things, of course, have themes, right? That go into the ultimately the story that we see in the film. But again, I was really surprised at how few people, again, like I would say, honestly, off the top of my head, I'm going to say there were two people who I thought, oh, they actually thought about what the main message of the film is about, or the main themes that were raised in the film. So that was I'll be honest, that was disappointing. And yeah, it surprised me. Anyway, let's move on. Yeah, I'd love to hear people again. If you're listening, please drop a comment and provide some feedback to that point and others that I raised during this podcast. Okay, what didn't surprise me? I guess I wasn't surprised that so few people rented the film. Like so many people, I would say hundreds of people contacted me um, over the last year when they heard that I was going to make the film. And of course, I've been spending a lot of time on promotion, including this podcast, but online on people's streams and elsewhere on the web. Um, but yeah, in the end, you know, I don't know. how many people paid for, maybe 40 people, 45 people, well under 50, I would say, actually paid $5.99 to rent the film. And there are quite a few people who complained about having to pay or complained that that was too much money. And again, that didn't surprise me. My goal, I wanted to make more to pay off some debts for the film too. Obviously, when you stream a film and you call it a fundraiser, you want to make money to cover your debts. But realistically, I thought I was honestly that I would make about $500, and that's exactly what I made. So, so it didn't surprise me that there was some pushback and a lot of people just, I think, were unwilling to pay for content. It's not surprising too because this is a community of people who create content, so they've normalized it, right? They've internalized it. Maybe that's a better word. So it's not necessarily a special thing to them, right? They don't see. Some people talked about not really seeing the difference between YouTube content creators and what I made, a 33-minute documentary film, right? And again, that doesn't surprise me when people start to make media, it becomes common, right? And so to charge $5.99, and very few people charge for their content on YouTube, and particularly within the violent community, it sticks out, right? Anyway, so that didn't surprise me that so few people were unwilling or were unhappy with me asking for $5.99 as a fundraiser to run the film. Anyway, let's put that to a side too. Um, I think what else didn't surprise me? Um, I guess that YouTubers have strong opinions about media products, right? That didn't surprise me at all. Didn't surprise me that people had very strong feelings about the show, both positive and negative. It's a very divisive show, right? So I knew that right from the get-go, right in like pre-production when I was talking to people online about the possibility of making the film. It was really obvious in their reaction to me, um, that they either loved it or they hated it or loved to hate it or hated to love it, whatever. You get my point, right? So I knew going into this that there was going to be strong reactions to what it was that I was going to produce at the end of the day. So there you go. That's what didn't surprise me. So I guess when I wrote out some notes for the podcast, I didn't really write out the good things that people uh, spoke about. But I guess for me, the most important thing was whether or not people were interested in the themes that, the ideas and the themes that I wanted to raise in the film, themes about identity, about kind of online celebrity, about toxic online culture. But like again, very few people talked about those. So I guess I'm most of the positive comments, and there were a lot of positive comments that I received. People said it was very professional. The people who did talk about the music said it was excellent. So a lot of kind of production like comments, which great. I'm happy that people thought it looked good. Um, some people said it was engaging, but again, people, it was, I found it hard to engage people in a more serious dialogue about the themes brought up in the film. And I think that just reinforced for me the fact that the Rachel's Ghost and a few other shows online, they're difficult spaces to engage in any meaningful dialogue, right? And so even when I went on a few streams to talk about the film after it was, again, at least kind of pre-release for the fundraiser, yeah, I just found it difficult to kind of be able to raise more serious questions, right? So that's something that I need to think about a little bit more. Like, obviously, I'm going to be screening, or maybe not so obviously, but I will be screening the film at film festivals. I will be screening the film at universities, and I'm hoping, depending again, because it's a 33-minute film, In the past, I've screened films at independent cinemas in Ottawa and Toronto and elsewhere, Vancouver. Might be more difficult, but anyway, I'll have a different set of audiences, I guess, is the point, to talk to about the film, to get questions thrown to me from different audiences. So again, just to wrap this up quickly, yeah, I really appreciated everyone's comments, both constructive, critical comments. I really appreciated actually the some of the really dismissive comments and negative and angry comments. Not that there were a lot, but I thought they were really compelling and interesting. And again, they opened my eyes to the nature of online life. So thanks everyone, and stick around. I think next episode I'll talk a little bit more about the film festivals that I'm submitting the film to. Take care, everyone.
Though Horton didn't hear a who, he heard whoever said they knew a sitcom copy when they saw one. And with money comes temptation, so he gave them all.